the watchmaker of moments, the echo of an eternal love. Good evening, wandering souls seeking refuge in the twilight of stories. Have you ever felt that a moment was so perfect it deserved to last for an eternity? And what if I told you there was someone who dedicated his entire life to safeguarding just one of those moments? Tonight, on the Corner of Lost Stories, I will take you to a workshop frozen in time, covered in the dust of decades of waiting. This is the tale of Elias, the man who measured not the hours, but the heartbeats. His is the story of a love so profound it sought to defy the very laws of time. Our narrative begins not with him, but with Clara, a young journalist with a fascination for abandoned architecture and the whispers they leave behind. One day, while exploring an old district condemned to demolition, she found a small shop that had escaped the notice of maps and progress. The facade was dark wood, nearly black from the weather, with a barely legible sign. Elias V., Artisan of Time. The door was secured with a padlock that seemed as old as the building itself, but next to it, in a crack in the frame, she found a key. It was a heavy, bronze key, with a filigree depicting an hourglass intertwined with a rose. Curiosity, that compass of the soul, overcame her caution. With some effort, the old padlock gave way. As she opened the door, a scent of old wood, oil, and something metallic and sweet like nostalgia enveloped her. The interior was a sanctuary. Light filtered through a grime-covered window, illuminating motes of dust that danced like spirits. This was no ordinary watchmaker's shop. The walls were covered with devices that only vaguely resembled clocks. Some had crystal faces containing iridescent liquids. Others had no hands, only exposed gears that remained motionless. There were dozens of them, all silent, all waiting. It was a cemetery of uncounted seconds. As Clara ventured deeper, and if these stories that rescue the beauty of the past resonate with you, consider leaving your mark in the form of a like. It helps these voices from fading away. In the center of the workshop was a workbench, meticulously organized despite the blanket of dust. Upon it, a leather-bound journal lay open, as if its owner had just stepped away. The pages were filled with an elegant, precise script, accompanied by sketches of impossible gears and mechanisms. Clara sat down carefully on an old stool and began to read the first visible entry. "Time is a thief," the page began. "It robs us of precious moments and leaves us with only the faded echo of memory. But I will not allow it." The journal belonged to Elias. Through his words, Clara began to know the man who had inhabited this place. He was not a simple watchmaker. He saw himself as a custodian, a poet of mechanics. He believed the true measure of time was not the universal tick-tock, but the unique cadence of each human heart. His obsession was not precision, but preservation. Every clock he built was an attempt to capture an emotion. He described a chronograph of melancholy, designed to slow down on rainy days. He wrote of a clock of joy, whose gears would chime a soft melody only when the sun shone brightly. But the majority of his writings revolved around a single name, Lena. Lena was the sun around which his universe orbited. He met her in the town square during a spring festival. He described her not with physical details, but with the feelings she evoked. She was like the first note of a song you know you will love forever. Their days together, according to the journal, were a symphony of simple yet perfect moments. Walks at sunset, the smell of the coffee she brewed, the sound of her laughter which, according to Elias, could make the geraniums bloom in winter. For her, Elias was building his masterpiece, a clock that would not mark the hours, but would hold a single instant. His theory was complex, blending physics, alchemy, and a profound philosophy of love. He believed that an emotion strong enough, a memory lived with absolute intensity, could imprint its essence onto matter. He wanted to capture a single moment with Lena, an anchor against the ocean of time. But then, the tone of the journal shifted. The entries became more frantic, more desperate. Lena fell ill. A sudden, cruel illness that slowly began to extinguish her light. Elias abandoned all his other projects. The workshop became a feverish laboratory where he fought against the most relentless clock of all, mortality. Her every cough is a gear breaking in my soul, he wrote on a page stained, perhaps, by a tear. The race against time became literal. He needed to finish his masterpiece before the moment he wished to preserve became nothing but a memory. Clara felt a lump in her throat. She was no longer a journalist investigating a place. She was a confidante, traveling through a stranger's pain. She kept reading, turning the pages with reverent care. The last entry in the journal was dated 50 years ago. I have done it, it read. The chronograph of longing is complete. This afternoon, in the garden, under the old oak tree, the sun was perfect, her smile. It was everything. The world can keep turning, the seasons can change. But a small part of the universe, here in my workshop, will always be that afternoon. Forever. There were no more entries. The journal ended there. Clara looked up, her eyes misty. Her gaze swept across the workshop again, now with a new understanding. These were not clocks. They were reliquaries. Each one a failed attempt or a study for his great work. Then she saw it. In a corner, covered by a dusty tarp, was a larger object. She approached and with trembling hands pulled back the cloth. Before her stood the most beautiful and complex device she had ever imagined. It was a glass sphere nearly a meter high, supported by a structure of brass and copper that twisted like the roots of a tree. Inside the sphere, thousands of impossibly fine gears and silver filaments floated in apparent disarray, motionless. There was no dial, no hands. Only a small ivory lever at the base with a single inscription. Breathe. Clara understood. This was the chronograph of longing. Elias's final work. The testament to his love. She hesitated for a moment. Did she have the right to intrude upon such an intimate sanctuary? But the silence of the workshop seemed to plead with her, asking her to complete the circle, to bear witness. With the tip of her finger, she gently pushed the ivory lever. For a second, nothing happened. The silence grew even deeper. Then, a soft humming began to emanate from the sphere, an almost imperceptible vibration. The thousands of gears and filaments began to move, not like a mechanism, but like a flock of birds. They aligned, they intertwined, forming patterns of light and shadow within the glass. The light in the workshop seemed to dim, concentrating entirely on the chronograph. Clara felt a gentle warmth on her face, like the sun on a spring afternoon. She smelled the scent of roses and freshly cut grass. She heard the distant murmur of laughter and the whisper of wind through the leaves of a tree. Inside the sphere, the light and gears were no longer metal. They swirled to form an image. It was not a sharp picture, but an impression, a feeling made visible. A man and a woman sitting on a blanket under a large oak tree. The sunlight filtering through the leaves, creating golden patterns on the ground. He was handing her a wildflower. She was smiling. And that smile, Clara held her breath. It was the smile Elias had described. She didn't see it with her eyes. She felt it in her soul. A smile that contained all the happiness in the world. The moment lasted barely 10 seconds. 10 seconds of absolute perfection. Then, as gently as it began, the humming ceased. The gears dispersed and returned to their stillness. The light in the workshop returned to normal. The scent of roses faded. The silence returned, but it was no longer a silence of abandonment, but of peace. Clara stood motionless, tears rolling down her cheeks. She had witnessed a miracle. She had felt the echo of a love so powerful it had left a scar on the fabric of time. She understood that Elias hadn't died of sorrow. He had lived out the rest of his days with his treasure, visiting that spring afternoon whenever the loneliness grew too great. He needed nothing else. His entire world was contained within that glass sphere. Clara left the workshop, closing the door carefully behind her. She placed the bronze key back in the crack in the frame, leaving it for the next curious heart that destiny might guide there. She decided not to write about the workshop. Some stories are not meant for the pages of a newspaper. They are too sacred, too pure. They belong to the realm of whispers and legends. Elias had not sought fame, only eternity for a feeling. His legacy was not his clocks, but the proof that love, in its purest form, is the only force capable of creating an infinite moment. Elias's workshop was demolished weeks later, but his story, through Clara, found a way to live on, like an echo that refuses to fade. Elias wasn't trying to stop time, but to honor it, proving that life is not measured by the number of years we breathe, but by the number of moments that take our breath away. What is the moment you would keep forever? Do you believe a love like this can truly transcend time? Share your thoughts in the comments. This corner thrives on your echoes. If this story has touched your soul, leave a like and subscribe, hitting the bell so the echo of our stories always finds its way to you. Until next time.